The corporate psychopath craves the feeling of power and control over other people, and their extreme behaviour sparked the interest of Professor Simon Kroom, a lecturer in supply chain management at the University of San Diego, and recent online graduate of the MSc in Psychology programme at the University of Liverpool. Together with his research partner Dr. Katharina Fritzen, a Liverpool PhD graduate and psychologist based in Australia, they examine the personality traits of these so-called snakes in suits and discuss ways to counteract a culture of mayhem and mismanagement.
Probably the most well-known personality assessment for psychopathy is Hare's psychopathy checklist, and it's around people having these kind of superficial charm characteristics, so they can come across as being quite likeable, quite gregarious, quite outgoing, quite outspoken, tell lots of funny stories. But the charm has a superficial quality, so perhaps there's not much below the surface there.
I worked with buyers and in purchasing all of my professional career, and a lot of the traits and behaviours you see in buyers, the people who spend essentially all of a corporation's money, very much charismatic, glib, charm and arrogance is certainly a highly appropriate term, but also an ability to kind of railroad or ride roughshod over suppliers and individuals within an organisation.
So they don't really have empathy for people, they don't really feel remorse.
Steve Jobs as well, when you look at his biography, there are some very common traits there of a phenomenally creative but also an extremely powerful social influencer, but also having the ability to use emotions to get his own way. You know, a number of cases where he burst into tears as a grown man, so to speak, in a corporate office because he wasn't able to convince his colleagues, or he felt he wasn't convincing his colleagues of what needed to be done.
If we go back to the original definition by Cleckley, who was one of the initial people to describe psychopathy, if we sort of put those characteristics into a corporate setting, we get someone who potentially can function quite well, so quite high functioning in terms of intelligence, perhaps quite good at problem solving, quite good at creative problem solving.
There's been a very little bit of research trying to identify whether specific professions have higher degrees of psychopathy than others. And you would think that people who work in Wall Street would be the obvious ones, but we also have seen work that has identified people who are first responders, people who work in trauma care, have high degrees of psychopathy. And Kevin Dutton, who is a professor at Oxford, his original work was with special forces in the UK, trying to find out, well, what makes these people put themselves not just in harm's way, but in an extreme, almost a self-deprivating manner.
I think this comes from Kevin Dutton's book, The Wisdom of the Psychopath. So he talks about the dilemma of a person who is living in Nazi Germany, and they're hiding from the Nazis, and they're Jewish, and they're hiding under the floorboards of a house. And there are 100 other people there with them, and there's a baby in there. And they can hear that the Nazis are approaching, and the baby starts to cry. And so what do? Do you kill the baby in order to save yourself and the other 100 people who are hiding from the Nazis, or do you not kill the baby? From a purely, I guess, utilitarian point of view, objectively, the right answer is to kill the baby because you're saving hundreds of lives. But most people would struggle with the idea of doing that, but not the psychopaths.
Psychopaths invariably are great at impression management, so they're fantastic in interviews. They're the best thing since sliced bread. And then by the time you've discovered that they're a psychopath, if you do, it's way too late. And in the end, it comes down to people. It comes down to the fact that a lot of managers can't manage people. A lot of individuals need different means of motivating and directing than the person sitting next to them, because people have diverse personalities. And that to me has been the big revelation of my learning over the last 3 years with the psychology program, is that if we try and treat our employees as, you know, a crowd, we're missing a big opportunity. And if employees are not satisfied, they're not being creative. And if employees are not being creative, then they're not switched on at work. And this is not about getting 40 hours of blood, sweat and tears out of somebody. It's about giving people the flexibility and the opportunity to maximise their potential in a way that serves the corporation. All of that is to say, the influence of psychopathic traits and psychopathic behaviour is not insignificant. It's not a trivial factor, but it's not a pervasive wallpaper in every corporate boardroom.